September 15, 1928. Al Capone sat in his office at the Lexington Hotel in Chicago, reading a telegram from New York. His face didn't change, but everyone in the room could feel the temperature drop. He folded the telegram slowly, placed it on his desk, and looked at his consigliere, Jake Guzik. "Tell me about this kid again." Guzik opened a folder. Bumpy Johnson, 23 years old, Harlem enforcer, works for Stephanie St. Clair, smart, dangerous, and according to our men, completely insane. Capone smiled. "Insane how?" "He sent your collectors back to Chicago in a produce truck, unconscious, with a note pinned to one of them." Capone's smile faded. "What did the note say?" Guzik hesitated. "Tell Capone that Harlem doesn't pay rent to tourists." This is the story of the week. Al Capone tried to take Harlem and why he never tried again. To understand what happened in September 1928, you need to understand what Harlem was and what Chicago wanted. Harlem was the gold mine of the East Coast. The numbers racket, illegal lottery, was pulling in $50,000 a week. Policy banks on every corner. Working people betting their nickels and dimes, hoping to hit the number and change their lives. It was pure profit, low risk, high reward. And in 1928, it was controlled by a Caribbean immigrant named Stephanie St. Clair, also known as Queenie. She ran Harlem with intelligence, not violence, paid her people well, protected her community. And she had an enforcer who scared even the men who didn't scare easy. His name was Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy was young in 1928, just 23, but he'd already built a reputation. He didn't talk much, didn't threaten, he just acted. When Dutch Schultz's men tried to shake down one of Queenie's runners, Bumpy put 2 of them in the hospital with broken ribs and a message: "Touch our people again and you won't walk out." Schultz backed off, for now, but Bumpy's reputation spread beyond New York. And when you build a reputation in the underworld, eventually someone comes to test it. Al Capone was the king of Chicago. Bootlegging had made him a millionaire. But Prohibition was ending. Everyone knew it. The writing was on the wall. And smart criminals were looking for the next empire. Capone's eyes turned east, New York, specifically Harlem. He'd heard about the numbers racket, heard it was run by a woman, a black woman. And Capone, like most mobsters of his era, didn't think a black woman could hold territory against real power, so he made a decision. Send a crew to Harlem. Make an offer. Take control. August 1928. 3 men stepped off a train at Grand Central Station, Chicago outfit. Capone's best, Tony the Enforcer Accardo, Sam Mooney Giancana, and a man everyone called the Hammer because of how he collected debts. They checked into the Teresa Hotel in Harlem, the nicest place a white man could stay in a black neighborhood. And they started making moves. First they visited the policy banks, introduced themselves, made the pitch simple. "Mr. Capone would like to invest in your operation. 50-50 split. You keep running things. We provide protection and connections. Everybody wins." Most of the policy bankers were terrified. Capone's name carried weight. These weren't local thugs. These were Chicago killers. But nobody said yes, because they all knew the same thing. Before you make a deal in Harlem, you talk to Queenie. And before you talk to Queenie, you survive Bumpy. September 1st, 1928. Bumpy Johnson walked into the Teresa Hotel at 10 p.m. He was alone. No backup, no weapons visible. Just a young man in a pressed suit, looking like he was there for a business meeting. He walked up to the front desk. "I'm here to see the gentleman from Chicago, room 412. The clerk's eyes went wide. "Sir, I don't think." Bumpy placed a $20 bill on the desk. "Call them, tell them Bumpy Johnson is downstairs. They'll want to meet me." 5 minutes later, Bumpy was in room 412. Tony Accardo opened the door. He was 6'2", 820 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. He looked down at Bumpy and laughed. "You're Bumpy Johnson? You're a kid." Bumpy walked past him into the room. Giancana and the Hammer were sitting at a table, cards spread out, whiskey glasses half full. Bumpy pulled out a chair and sat down. Uninvited. "I hear you've been talking to my people." Accardo closed the door. "We've been making business proposals. In my neighborhood, without my permission." Giancana leaned back, amused. "Your neighborhood? Kid, you don't own Harlem. You work for a woman who thinks she does." Bumpy's face didn't change. "Stephanie St. Clair runs Harlem. I protect it. And you 3 have been here a week making offers nobody asked for. So let me make this simple. You have 24 hours to leave New York. If you're still here tomorrow night, you won't leave at all." The Hammer stood up. He was the biggest of the 3, 6'4", hands like cinder blocks. You threatening us, boy? Bumpy stood up slowly. No, I'm informing you. There's a difference. The Hammer took a step forward. You got a lot of mouth for someone with no backup. Bumpy smiled. I don't need backup in my city. You do. What happened next, accounts differ. Some say Bumpy pulled a knife. Some say he went for a gun. But everyone agrees on one thing. The Hammer threw the first punch. A haymaker that would have knocked out a horse. Bumpy ducked, not just ducked, disappeared under it. And before the Hammer could recover, Bumpy drove a knee into his ribs, hard, the kind of hit that cracks bone. The Hammer doubled over. Bumpy grabbed a whiskey bottle from the table and smashed it across the back of the big man's head. Glass shattered. The Hammer hit the floor like a sack of cement. Accardo and Giancana reached for their guns, but Bumpy was already at the door. 24 hours, gentlemen, after that Chicago can send flowers. He walked out, left 3 Chicago enforcers standing in a hotel room with their unconscious partner bleeding on the carpet. They didn't chase him, because they'd just seen something that scared them more than Capone's anger. They'd seen a man who didn't fear death. September 2nd, 1928, the Chicago crew didn't leave. They should have. Instead, they doubled down. If Bumpy wanted a war, they'd give him one. They went to the Cotton Club, Harlem's most famous nightclub, sat at the best table, ordered the most expensive champagne, made a show of being untouchable. They were sending a message, we're not scared of you. By 11 p.m., the club was packed, music was loud, dancers on stage, the Chicago men were laughing, drinking, feeling invincible. Then the lights went out. All of them. The club went pitch black. People screamed. Someone knocked over a table. Glass shattered. When the lights came back on 30 seconds later, the Chicago men were gone. Not dead, not beaten, just gone. Their table was empty, champagne still bubbling in their glasses, cigarettes still burning in the ashtray. But Accardo, Giancana, and the Hammer had vanished. At 6 a.m. the next morning, September 3rd, a produce truck pulled up to Union Station in Chicago. The driver got out, walked away, and disappeared. Railroad workers found the truck an hour later. Inside, 3 men, unconscious, tied up, bruised but alive, and pinned to Tony Accardo's jacket was a handwritten note. Tell Capone that Harlem doesn't pay rent to tourists. Mine is Bumpy Johnson. When Al Capone read that note, he didn't explode, didn't threaten revenge. He just stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at Jake Guzik and said, tell me everything about this kid. For the next 2 days, Capone's intelligence network compiled a file on Bumpy Johnson. And what they found was troubling. Bumpy wasn't just muscle. He was smart, strategic. He'd grown up fighting, spent time in prison, learned to read, educate himself. He understood power, and more importantly, he understood loyalty. Harlem protected him because he protected Harlem. That made him untouchable in a way Capone's money never could. September 10, 1928, Capone made a decision. He called a meeting with his top lieutenants, laid out the situation. Harlem is profitable, but it's not worth a war, not with someone like Bumpy Johnson. He's not greedy, he's not stupid, and he's willing to die for his neighborhood. You can't negotiate with that. You can't intimidate that. You can only respect it. Frank Nitti, Capone's enforcer, disagreed. Boss, we can't let some kid in Harlem embarrass us. We send 20 guys, burn his world down. Capone shook his head. You're not listening. He didn't embarrass us. He taught us something. There are neighborhoods you can buy, and there are neighborhoods you can't. Harlem is the second kind. Capone never sent anyone to Harlem again. Not in 1928. Not ever. But the story doesn't end there. Because Capone understood something most mobsters didn't. If you can't beat someone, you make them useful. So in December 1928, Capone sent a different kind of messenger. Not an enforcer, a businessman. His name was Paul Ricca, one of Capone's most trusted advisors. Ricca traveled to New York, checked into the Waldorf Astoria, and sent word to Stephanie St. Clair. Mr. Capone requests a meeting. No threats, no demands, just conversation. Queenie agreed, but only if Bumpy was there. December 15, 1928. The meeting took place in a private room at Delmonico's, a high-end restaurant in Midtown. Neutral ground. Ricca arrived first. Queenie and Bumpy walked in 10 minutes later. Ricca stood, extended his hand. Mrs. St. Clair, Mr. Johnson, thank you for meeting me. Bumpy didn't shake his hand, just sat down. You've got 15 minutes. Use them wisely. Ricca smiled. Direct, I like that. Mr. Capone wants to make something clear. He has no interest in taking Harlem. What happened in September was a misunderstanding. His men overstepped. They've been disciplined. Queenie raised an eyebrow. Disciplined. Let's say their responsibilities have been reassigned, permanently. Bumpy leaned forward. So why are you here? Because Mr. Capone respects what you've built, and he believes there's a way for Chicago and Harlem to help each other without stepping on each other's toes. Queenie crossed her arms. We don't need help from Chicago. Perhaps not. But you do need friends. Dutch Schultz is coming. You know it. I know it. He wants Harlem, and he's going to bring an army. When that happens, you'll need allies. Mr. Capone is offering to be one. Bumpy's eyes narrowed. At what cost? Information. When we hear something that affects Harlem, we tell you. When you hear something that affects our operations, you tell us. No money, no territory, just intelligence sharing. Queenie and Bumpy exchanged a look, a silent conversation. Then Queenie spoke. And if we say no? Ricca stood up. Then we respect that. But the offer stands. Mr. Capone believes the future belongs to people who cooperate, not compete. He made a mistake in September. He's trying to correct it. Bumpy stood too. Tell Capone this. Harlem will never be his. But if he respects our boundaries, we'll respect his. If Dutch comes and Chicago has information that helps us, we'll listen. But the moment one of his men crosses 110th Street with bad intentions, the deal is off. Ricca extended his hand again. This time Bumpy shook it. Fair enough, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Capone will be pleased. After Ricca left, Queenie turned to Bumpy. Do you trust him? Bumpy shook his head. No. But I trust that Capone is smart enough to know he can't take Harlem by force. And that's enough for now. Queenie smiled. You made Al Capone back down, at 23. Do you know what that means? Bumpy looked out the window at the New York skyline. It means we just bought time. Dutch is coming, and when he does, we'll need every advantage we can get. True to his word, Capone kept the agreement. In 1930, when Dutch Schultz started making moves on Harlem, Capone sent word through Ricca. Schultz is planning a major push. He's bringing 30 men. He's targeting your policy banks on Lenox Avenue. That information helped Bumpy and Queenie prepare, helped them survive the coming war. And when Dutch Schultz was eventually killed in 1935, Capone sent a telegram to Bumpy. Just 4 words. Respect is earned, not taken. The story of September 1928 became legend in the underworld. The week Bumpy Johnson made Al Capone walk away from Harlem, it established something that lasted for decades. Harlem was off limits to outside crews. Not because Capone was weak, because he was smart enough to recognize strength when he saw it. And what he saw in Bumpy Johnson was something rare. A man who couldn't be bought, couldn't be scared, and couldn't be broken. Years later in 1947, after Capone had died from syphilis in prison, Bumpy was asked by a reporter what he remembered most about the Capone situation. Bumpy thought for a long time. Then he said, Capone was a great criminal, but he made one mistake. He thought power came from fear. It doesn't, it comes from respect. When his men came to Harlem, they tried to scare us, but we scared them first. And when Capone heard about it, he didn't get angry, he got smart. That's the difference between a gangster and a king. If this story of respect, strategy, and the weak one man stood up to the most powerful mobster in America inspired you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe real power isn't about who has the most guns, it's about who's willing to use them for the right reasons. Share this with someone who needs to know that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about being smart enough to turn enemies into allies. What would you have done if Capone's men came to your neighborhood? Let me know in the comments.